not impossible. And I want all women with PCOS who are potentially facing, fertility issues or are thinking about fertility later on down the road to keep that in mind. And there are lots of options in the case that natural conception is not happening. There are lots of options, that you can try in order to kind of what we say, jumpstart ovulation.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode brought to you by Let's Get Checked. You can save 20% off your purchase by visiting tiyLGC.com/PCOS and using the code PCOS20 at checkout. Now I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the PCOS Oracle podcast, Cory. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. I've been following your Instagram for some time now and you share so much great information. You empower so many women who are suffering from, hormone imbalances, PCOS, and you empower them with the knowledge and those truth bombs and breaking some of those myths that I'm sure we'll cover in this episode, which I'm really excited because there's just so many myths surrounding PCOS, surrounding fertility, and it's obviously hindering a lot of people's, progress and affecting their mindset, which, mindset is a huge thing when it comes to, achieving your goals. I feel like it's pretty big, so it's something that needs to be worked on, and to not believe those myths that come along with a diagnosis or struggling with infertility, for example. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on. Like I said, I'm excited to speak with you and pick your brain and learn from you from all of the hard work and training that you do to become a registered dietitian. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on here. I follow your Instagram too. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's always good to have when you kind of network and
yes,
become kind of online friends with people who are kind of on the same have the same kind of mission and ideas, and then you get to speak with them and have this podcast. It's quite cool. I like it. That's one good thing about having a social media account like Instagram. It's pretty good.
I know. And you get to connect with people all over the world. I mean, otherwise I would have never, there's so many people that I've met through social media that work in PCOS or have PCOS. It's just a great way to connect and learn and exchange information, which is fantastic.
Yeah. People are finding out more about PCOS thanks to, social media and people sharing and advocating. So we're getting there. It's not too bad it used to be a few years ago when I was diagnosed, for example. But yeah, let's kind of get into the whole interview. So do you want to just share a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you help women with PCOS?
Yeah, definitely. So I have always been interested in endocrinology, and I'm a registered dietitian. So I went to school for that. I got my master's in nutritional science. Always interested in women's health. But didn't really know how I could, combine the two. And then I just kind of decided to pursue that after I got my degree and I graduated and, did all my internships and started working. And then I started working in a women's clinic, and I was helping to kind of see patients, pregnant women who are looking to conceive, lots of women with PCOS there, obviously. And I have PCOS too. So it kind of, all of my experience and passion for women's health just kind of combined into this career path that I decided to pursue. And it's been just a great journey so far. I love working with women. I love helping women. And I love connecting with other women like yourself who are really, making great strides in bringing more awareness to PCOS. It's such a sneaky, elusive, complex condition, and there's so many parts of it that are misunderstood. So we continue to learn. What we know now about PCOS is going to look very different than what we are going to know in 10 years. So it's really about using the best information that we have at hand, and kind of being able to help women with that. So I'm a dietitian, but I do lots of work around fertility is kind of my specialty, PCOS and fertility. And then I do lots of work around just hormone balance in general. I do digestion work. But whenever I work with a PCOS client, I'm looking not just at food, but I'm looking at sleep and gut health and stress. That's a huge one. exercise. So it's kind of bringing all those components into our work together to help them to mitigate some of their PCOS symptoms.
I like what you said, how when we look to the future in like 10 years, like what we thought and what we know now about PCOS will be like completely different. So I feel like even 10 years ago, what we know now to what we knew then is like completely different. I feel like the research is getting a lot better, and researchers are looking into it more to find out more about it. So I definitely agree with that. And what you touched on about how it's not just looking at what somebody's eating, their diet. It's a lot more holistic. So you take a holistic approach, which is so important for PCOS and any hormonal condition, because it's not just the food that we eat that can impact our hormones and our reproductive health. It's a lot more, the lifestyle, the exercise, the way you think, as you do, are you sleeping, are you like super stressed, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of layers to it. So it's really important to be addressing all of that.
Absolutely.
So before we touch on PCOS specifically and its impact on fertility, and obviously PCOS is one of the leading causes of infertility in women, can we touch on just other things that a woman might want to consider that might be impacting her fertility?
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, there's many things, and I'm sitting here trying to think of everything, and it would take me a long time to go over everything. But some of the other things that you need to think about, especially if you're having irregular cycles, but not just regular cycles, any kind of issues when it comes to fertility. And I'm not sure what it is like in the UK regarding kind of when you go to seek help for fertility. But here, typically you at least try for a little bit, and then you pursue medication and stimulated cycles and IUIs, what we call IUIs and IVF. So there's things like getting your thyroid checked. That's a big one. Hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, anatomical issues. If there's something in the uterus that they need to consider. Endometriosis is another big one. That one contributes a lot to infertility, and that's a really hard one to get a diagnosis for. It's extremely difficult. I think the average it's years in order to get a proper diagnosis for that. So if someone's, faced with that unexplained infertility diagnosis, it could definitely potentially be endometriosis. So that's something. Age, of course, age is our biggest indication of our fertility. So, if you're over, 35 is kind of the number that we use here. Then that's something to consider. And, that's really going to increase the kind of put you on a faster track to seeking those fertility services that I mentioned. Our weight. So being underweight, if you're not eating enough, you're not giving yourself enough calories. And what happens is your hormones are they don't feel safe enough to be produced in adequate amounts. So that's a big one. And I come across that actually more often than you might think. So, women that have a low, what we call, BMI, stress is a huge one. Stress is so powerful. It can throw off ovulation for a woman that otherwise has no hormonal issues. And I've seen that in my practice, women who I'm just working with for gut health issues. So nothing hormonally at all. Once this whole coronavirus thing hit, it was like, all of them, their cycles were just gone. So stress is a huge contributing factor to fertility. As much, it's one of those things that's easier said than done to really work on and fix, but that's a huge one. And of course, we can't forget the male piece to this. I think as women, a lot of times we tend to first blame ourselves, especially if we have PCOS. If we have PCOS and, we're having difficulties getting pregnant, we're automatically saying, it's me, that's the issue. Well, you have to do a sperm analysis and do several and really understand what's going on with your partner too, because, it takes two to tango, as I say. So that's a really big one to look into as well, especially because, that's something when we have PCOS, there are other symptoms that we experience. If a man has, say, like, really low motility, that he doesn't get a symptom for that. So you really do have to look into a sperm analysis in order to determine that. So those are just some things, that I can think of that may potentially, you should definitely look into if you're having any kind of issues conceiving.
Yeah, great glad you touched on that, because I feel like there is a large amount of things that can impact fertility and, you know,
Yes.
the menstrual cycle. I feel like a lot of women over this whole coronavirus, just their cycles just went completely out of whack, and I experienced that as well. And I was just like, oh, I kind of knew, I expected it was going to happen, so I was just like,
Yeah,
we just gotta, you know, it's going to happen. Just de-stress, relax, and eventually the next kind of cycle is fine. But
yes,
stress is a huge one.
exactly.
It is hard to, you know, you say just relax, like, you know, just
Right.
work on your stress management, and everyone's like, you're like the fifth person that said that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's like you feel bad because, like, personally, you know, everyone finds it hard to manage their stress, but
I know.
sometimes it's not the simple thing, but like one of the things. It sounds like super simple and easy to do, but you just have to kind of start from the basics. It's like a basic thing. Like when you're stressed, you obviously, your body's not feeling safe. So things like the reproductive functions kind of just take a backseat because you're in a state of stress. Your body's looking to protect itself, conserve energy. And with the case with when you're like a low BMI and you're not nourishing your body with enough calories, you're also going into that state of stress again. Your body's looking to protect itself. So if you're not nourishing your body, feeding yourself enough food for you personally, how can you, you know, feed another growing human being, or, you know? So yeah, that's definitely some huge ones. And like you mentioned, it's not just, you know, the woman blaming herself for her struggles. It could, you know, the male has to, you know, get certain tests done just to see, because you never know.
He does.
Take that blame. It's not. It's difficult. Thanks for touching on those things.
Yeah, and just one more thing on that too, just before we move on, it's also important to remember that some of these things can happen concurrently. You know, I've seen women with PCOS who are also under fueling. So we've got two things going on. And then I've seen women with, you know, severe PCOS whose partners have extremely low sperm count. So, you know, you could have two of these or three, you know, if you're really lucky, these things happening at the same time. So you might look at, you know, at multiple factors too. So,
yeah, I agree with women with PCOS who are like severely under eating, because obviously, you know, we know that when you go to get a diagnosis and you're told you've got PCOS, it's like the standard advice of lose weight, cut carbs. And, you know, I fell victim to that whole lose weight, cut carbs, and then you're, next thing you know, you've got like an eating disorder and you're eating 800 calories and your period will come back. So it's like, what was I even thinking?
I know. It's so true. Yeah, it happens.
But yeah, it's definitely something. Nourishing yourself is so important when you're looking to balance hormones and support your menstrual cycle and fertility.
Totally.
So, like we said, infertility is one of the leading causes of PCOS is one of the leading causes of infertility in you know, women. So, why does PCOS cause infertility? What's the thing driving it?
So PCOS, the main contributor is anovulatory cycles. So lack of ovulation or irregular ovulation. And what happens, you know, obviously, you know, with anovulation, it is impossible to get pregnant naturally without ovulation happening. Impossible. So you have to get that back on track. So that's, you know, but if you're experiencing irregular cycles, like say you're getting a period every other month, that gives you half the amount of chances that you would normally, a normal, you know, cycling woman would have. And it also is really hard to determine what we call the fertile window. So that's, you know, right before ovulation takes place. So it just makes it extremely difficult. And then there is also research about women with PCOS having slightly higher risks of things like miscarriage. So, you know, I think those two are probably the biggest ones that I can think of. It's really the ovulation that makes fertility really hard with PCOS.
So, and the whole fact that ovulation is impacted is obviously the whole hormonal imbalances, producing too much testosterone, and which can impact.
So high androgens can contribute to irregular cycles. Insulin resistance, same thing. You know, all kinds of issues that are happening kind of with PCOS, stress, you know, adrenal issues can contribute. So yeah, so it's kind of different variables there, but all contributing to that same issue. Yeah.
Interesting. So before we move on to potentially what you can do to balance hormones and improve, get into ovulate, what are some of those PCOS and fertility myths that you've come across that we can just quickly bust some now, so people have that motivation and feel empowered to,
Yeah, exactly. I think, a major one is that it's impossible to get pregnant when you have PCOS. That is a myth. It is, I will say, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It can be much more difficult, but it is not impossible. And I want all women with PCOS who are potentially facing, fertility issues or are thinking about fertility later on down the road to keep that in mind. And there are lots of options in the case that natural conception is not happening. There are lots of options that you can try in order to kind of, what we say, jumpstart ovulation for it to take place. So that's a big one. Another one I've heard is, or I get questions about from lots of women is, will my PCOS affect my pregnancy or my baby? Well, so you are at a higher risk of gestational diabetes with PCOS, especially if you have insulin resistance going on. And there's some research about a risk of preeclampsia being higher too. But ultimately, no, your baby is going to be just fine, and you're going to have a healthy pregnancy with PCOS. PCOS does not automatically mean pregnancy issues. However, like I said, there could be a higher risk for those certain things that could be complications. PCOS, there is, somewhat of a genetic link that they found. So they did, and I don't know if it was several studies or one, but they looked at women with PCOS and their daughters, and they found a higher likelihood of daughters of women with PCOS to have PCOS too. So I get that question, will my daughter have PCOS? And it's maybe is the answer. So other ones I've heard are, this is one of the biggest ones that I hear and I see is that going gluten and dairy free will solve all of your PCOS problems. False. There is very little to no research. And, when as dietitians, we're looking at clinical research in order to make claims. Not all dietitians do this, which is unfortunate. But a lot of colleagues that I respect and work with in the PCOS field, there's just no evidence to support this. Some women do feel better coming off of gluten and coming off of dairy. And so I like to recommend a trial of going off gluten and dairy for a few months and seeing how you feel. How are your symptoms? Some women swear that they feel better. Great. Keep on it then. But as far as research to back up the claim that you need to go gluten and dairy free and it's going to solve all of your PCOS issues, false. So that's a big one that I hear. Intermittent fasting and keto are going to solve your PCOS? Not necessarily. There's pros and cons to each, but that's not going to cure all of your problems. I think, anytime we hear these big blanket, statements, this will, this is going to solve your PCOS. And it sounds almost too easy. It's because it is. PCOS is such a complex condition. There's so many moving parts. And to just kind of slap that on, it's reckless, and it's detrimental potentially to a lot of women who are trying to manage PCOS without, medical intervention, and trying to conceive with PCOS without medical intervention. So those are big ones that I hear and I come across a lot. Same thing with soy as well. I hear a lot about, you shouldn't eat soy with PCOS. Soy is a weak phytoestrogen. It has very weak estrogenic effects. It's not going to cause you to, you're not going to eat a piece of tofu and your estrogen is going to skyrocket, bubble out of your ears. Okay. Soy is something that we can eat in moderation, just like everything else. So that's a big one that I hear too. And then another one that I hear is, like we mentioned earlier, you have to lose weight in order to conceive with PCOS. That's not true. There are plenty of women who have maintained the same BMI they have for years, and it can be helpful, and research does support that. I will say that, but it's not essential. You don't absolutely need to do that. So, yeah.
I'm glad we touched on some of those myths and raised some of those facts. And I agree that a lot of the time we say, keto can help, intermittent fasting can help, going, restricting these foods. And I feel people forget that we're all individuals, we're all unique, our bodies are completely different. The kind of root cause that might have triggered our PCOS is completely different. So just assuming, following keto is gonna heal everything is just not the, I feel like you said, there's not a problem following a certain way of eating, just to experiment. You won't know unless you try it. But if it doesn't work for you, then you need to move on and not feel like it's my fault or my PCOS can't be healed because this didn't work for me and it worked for Karen across the street. It's just like, it's not the case.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. And such a good point to make. We're all different. And PCOS is very similar in that fashion where it looks different on everybody. So
exactly.
So I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. Bust myths.
I always like it when when you get to busting those myths and literally just dropping truth bombs, and like people sometimes get offended and like, oh my god. But I feel like we need to be open to challenging the information that's out there, and we always have to go back to the fact that we're all individuals. So everything when you're working with clients, it has to be personalized. That's why if anyone you're working with is giving you some kind of standardized cookie cutter program. And another thing is, I feel like there's a lot of coaches and people who they find an approach that works for them, and then they kind of just throw it out there and be like, because this worked for me, it's automatically the ultimate cure for PCOS. When like I said, everyone's different. That's one thing that kind of frustrates me. But
oh gosh, totally. And if you put that in a perspective, when we're looking at clinical research, if you've got one person, say one coach that did XYZ, she ate 3 pine nuts a day for 6 years and it cured her PCOS. Yay. That's awesome. So if what we do, when we're doing when we're conducting research, is we would basically want to take that one person's experience, apply it to 6,000 other women with PCOS and repeat it over and over and over again to see if we would get the same result. And that's how we make these evidence-based claims, evidence-based research. This is how we get to that point. So you're literally taking one experience and expanding it and tossing it out there and throwing it against the wall and seeing if it sticks. And we're looking at research and looking at so many other people that have done something similar to see, if that really in fact did yield success. So, it's really important to look at who you're taking advice from and use your best judgment on whether or not to follow that. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think the main thing when you do when you are experimenting, is that you make sure that the thing that you choose is sustainable and that you could adhere to in the long term. That's like the biggest thing. I feel like people are so look at the short term all the time. It's like, okay, if this works for me and I can sustain it till till the end of the month, then and I can see improvements. No one really looks long term, because with PCOS it's like a lifelong condition. You can't just expect, okay, my symptoms have kind of at bay now and they're reversed, then everything's perfect, we can take out the champagne and celebrate. It's just like, you need to be doing this for the rest of your life. You can't go back to your old ways, or just it has to be something that you can see yourself doing till the day you die, basically.
Yes, I know. And that's difficult. We want instant gratification. We want to fix issues. We're problem solvers. But you have to continue to maintain, and that's a difficult pill for a lot of us to swallow, because we want to go back to doing the things that were easier. So, and I totally get that. I'm human too. So, yeah.
So okay, so we know that when we go to the doctor and they give us the PCOS diagnosis, we've mentioned a few of the standardized advices to lose weight, to cut carbs, and then the big one is, here's the birth control pill. This is gonna balance your hormones, regulate your cycle. And then the other thing is that they say is, which I got told as well, is that take this, and then when you want to get pregnant, so at the time I was like 18 when I got diagnosed, and then so I'm like not even thinking about having a baby at that age. I was like, okay, seems legit, I guess. I'll come back in, I don't know, 10 years or something. It's just like you never really think of, at that time you don't really think of what that person's saying, because you just think, okay, this pill's going to fix everything. Obviously, you know that the birth control pill is just a band-aid on the problem. Unfortunately, many women are on the pill for PCOS. Not obviously, it's great for preventing pregnancies. I'm not denying that. That's, if that's what you need, that's what you need. So, but for PCOS, it doesn't obviously get to that root cause.
It doesn't.
And a lot of women come to realize that when they come off the pill, that their cycles are basically gone. So some women might get their periods back, regulate their cycles after 4 months or something. Others might get it, longer. Who knows? So how long should women start trying to conceive after coming off the pill? And on the other kind of hand, how early should you start planning to conceive, become pregnant?
So that's a good question. I think the first question there, how long should women wait until from the time that they finish up their last birth control pill to when they start conceiving? I mean, to be honest, you could start immediately. There is no research that shows that, if you finish up your cycle of your birth control pill and then you get pregnant the next cycle, that there's any harm to the baby whatsoever. It does not increase your risk for miscarriage, none of that. There are even women who have gotten pregnant on the pill and have perfectly healthy babies. So it's not 100% effective. So it does happen. So theoretically, you could just go right into it. Ideally, because research does show us that birth control can kind of deplete some of our nutrients. So I typically recommend 3 months. Try to kind of, you want to try to get your, if you can, try to get your hormone levels sort of balanced as much as possible. You've gone a while without having, any real surge in your hormones. It's, you're just kind of been taking synthetic hormones. So your hormones are literally, I use this analogy a lot, but they're like waking up again. And you want to kind of support that process and try to replenish any nutrients that have potentially been lost. Taking a high quality prenatal, making sure that you're focusing on, a PCOS and fertility friendly diet. So I would say in a perfect unicorn sparkly world, I would say 3 months would be great. But we don't live in a perfect world. So sometimes it happens right away. Sometimes it takes longer, and that's okay too.
So I guess we can quickly touch on, as you said, that the pill can deplete certain nutrients, vitamins, minerals. What are some of these nutrients that it can deplete, so our listeners can just be aware of?
So I don't have a full list at the top of my head, but I do know B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc is a big one. So, I think I have a list somewhere on my Instagram that I created. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there's quite a few. So it's worth it to get in that high quality prenatal for sure.
Awesome. All right, so I can maybe find something on your Instagram and link it in the show notes if anyone's interested.
And I can see the post in my head. Yes, definitely. Let's do that. I'll send it to you.
Awesome. So we know that women often struggle to conceive because the whole fact that they don't know when their fertile window is. What are some of these? How can women figure out when their fertile window is? What's some of those testing options? How can they go about figuring it out?
So there's the best way to figure out if you're ovulating. I would say, clarify that the best way is to go and get an ultrasound, but none of us can go in every day and get ultrasounds. So the next best way is taking your temperature through what we call a BBT thermometer, basal body temperature thermometer. And you wake up every morning, you take your temperature, and your body temperature actually rises very subtly, but it rises right after ovulation, and that's due to the production of progesterone. So you need a special thermometer to detect it. You can't just use, the one that you have lying around for when you're sick. And there's all kinds of devices, and I love this world that's, that I'm learning more about. It's femtech. So it's, there's all kinds of devices that women can use where they don't have to wake up every morning and take their temperature at the same time, because it's kind of a pain in the butt. And especially if you have a crazy schedule, like me, I'm waking up at different times every morning. If you work night shift, or you work 3 days a week, or, it's just, these devices are wearable. So you can wear them all night long, and track your cycle. And these are so helpful even for women that aren't trying to conceive, just women with PCOS in general. I used one for a while, and I was able to see, I wasn't ovulating. So they're great. And there's ones that are specifically made for irregular cycles. One of them is called OvuSense. That's a great one. Temp Drop is another good one. Ava bracelet is great. That one you can, but it's not great for irregular cycles. So that one's not probably my top recommendation, but it is great. It's a wonderful device too. So those BBT thermometers can help you detect when ovulation happens. That way you're able to say, oh, okay, I ovulated, yay. I should expect to have a period, or I can take a pregnancy test in about 2 weeks, because you're always going to go about 2 weeks from ovulation to when you get a period. So it really allows you to understand where you are in your cycle, and you'll be able to detect patterns over time. So you'll be able to say, okay, like, in school we learn about a 14-day ovulation. We have a 28-day cycle, and we ovulate on day 14. How lovely. But with PCOS, who freaking knows? So we're able to kind of pick up on this pattern. So, okay, I think usually I don't ovulate till about day 30, but at least you know that. And that way you can combine that with what we call OPKs, ovulation predictor kits, if you want to do that. You can combine them and see when you're ovulating, when you're about to ovulate. So using those two things together can be so helpful. And those OPKs detect what's called luteinizing hormone, or LH, and that LH surges right before ovulation. I will say some women with PCOS have chronically elevated LH. So OPKs are always positive. So in that case, those OPKs aren't going to be helpful for you, unfortunately. So if you're one of the lucky that is the case, probably wouldn't use those. But if you don't have that LH going on all the time, using that in conjunction with the BBT, that is a magic, wonderful combination in order to help you pinpoint the best days to have intercourse and the most likely days that you can conceive. And that's so key, because that's what women without PCOS, with regular cycles, are able to do, pretty much without any of that stuff. So it gives it gives women with PCOS who are trying to conceive that same luxury, but it takes more work, more effort, like everything with PCOS. But it can be a great, wonderful tool. Those two. Or on their own too. You could just use OPKs and see what happens there. You could just use BBT thermometers and see what happens there. You can use BBT thermometers as birth control devices. You can use them in order to prevent conception. They're not perfect, but there's no birth control method that is. So keep that in mind too.
Yes. What you touched on about the whole thermometer and looking at your temperature is that I know a lot of women who always say it's just so stressful because you have to wake up at the same time. You got to make sure like the temperature is pretty much the same, so it doesn't kind of throw off any those fluctuations. And women find it super stressful. So, and also, like we said, stress can really impact fertility.
So true.
But yeah, another good product that you can use for tracking ovulation to see if when your fertile window is Mirror, and I've got a whole review on this as well that I personally used as well, which was pretty good. It uses a whole learning algorithm. So you pee in a little thingy, you dip that fertility wand, and then it tells you your LH level, the whole the amount, and then it uses that learning algorithm to predict when you might be ovulating. So pretty good. I have a whole review on that, so if anyone's interested in like reading it, I'll have
What
it
is
in the
it?
link to the show notes.
Mira, M-A-R-A?
Yeah, MIRA, yeah.
No, I've never heard of it. Oh my gosh, cool. I have to check that out.
It's pretty good, actually. They were kind enough to send out one to use
Yeah.
and review. I was pretty
Yeah.
impressed with it. It's
Yeah.
just amazing how this technology, since like you're
I
using like
know.
artificial intelligence, all these
Yes.
algorithms, I'm just like, whoa.
Yes, I know. And it's ovulation is such a, in humans at least, is such a secret, no, you don't know what's going on. So it's so fascinating and great to be able to kind of finally get a clue what's going on.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see if you're someone who likes to look at data and like numbers, stuff like
Yeah.
this can really help you, because obviously with OPKs they just they give you a smiley face or two lines or something like that, and it's just like, what does that mean? Am I actually ovulating? And you like,
Yes.
there's not enough information. It's like, I don't even know. It's just so stressful.
I know, exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of info that you can glean from those devices. Absolutely.
So, and the other thing I feel like women need to be more aware of is the whole fertility awareness method of being, paying attention to cervical mucus. All this kind of stuff is like an indication as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I feel like, we have to use that as well. Because I know like when you're growing up and you're learning about your menstrual cycle and all this stuff, you never actually learn about this stuff. Like women are learning about like the 20s, the late 30s. Like, what is going on?
I'm in my 30s. I'm like, wow, why didn't we learn this in school? It's so helpful. Yeah.
I feel like the main thing we get taught about is that the bleed is the main thing. I never knew we have to be focusing on ovulation. And like,
I didn't even know
so
what
frustrating.
ovulation. What is that? Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. I know it's so wild. And yeah, the period is definitely just one part of the equation. There's so many things to consider. Yeah, absolutely. I know. I wish we learned more. Yeah. And I do a lot of education in my practice too. I teach clients how to chart. I teach them how to use a BBT thermometer, and that's a great, I'm glad that I'm able to offer that, because like we said, we don't get that anywhere else. So we have to go do all of our own, research in order to understand that. I remember when I first started to do that, it wasn't about fertility. I really learning about my cycles, and I just had to teach myself, like, okay, what is this chart thing? What's going on? Like a green day, a red day, like what? I can't do what, when, wait, ugh. It was just it's overwhelming. It took me a long time to like even understand what the heck, how to even use it. So yeah. But yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely important to as you said, whenever you're, wanting to conceive, it's always good to start doing things, yesterday. You should have started.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. The more the better. So absolutely. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's kind of delve into what women can do from, the whole diet, the lifestyle, all these kind of the mechanisms that can improve fertility. I don't know, should we just start off with diet? Is there, because I know you talk a lot about, nutrition and certain foods that can help hormones and fertility. So I'll just kind of throw it over to you.
Yes. I wish it was as simple as saying kale. You just gotta eat more kale. That's it. You're good to go. Unfortunately, nutrition is science. It is a science, and it's very nuanced. But general recommendations for nutrition for PCOS, a place that I always start is blood sugar balance. Whether or not you have any kind of insulin resistance going on, blood sugar balance is crucial to control androgens and to help control our cortisol levels, our stress hormone. And in terms of if weight loss is something that you're working on, super important. So blood sugar balance, that means focusing a lot on protein and fats, and really being mindful of carbs. because carbohydrates have the ability to raise our blood sugar. So it's not about eliminating carbohydrates. We need carbohydrates to live. But it's really about controlling our portions and pairing carbohydrates with foods that help negate that blood sugar spike that would otherwise accompany that food, that carb. So for instance, before I was diagnosed with PCOS and I didn't understand, I considered myself to be a healthy eater. I was a dietitian. But I would eat, for a snack, I would have a banana and maybe like half a cup of berries, and that obviously two very healthy foods, but I was having lots of issues with blood sugar and I didn't understand why. So I instead of the cup of berries or whatever it was, I would replace that with a handful of almonds, and I'd pair the banana with the almonds together. And just that little thing, that's just one example, but just doing that little thing helped to control blood sugars immensely. And that was really important for my blood sugar regulation and PCOS. When it comes to PCOS and fertility, we really want to make sure we are eating lots of antioxidants for egg quality and egg health. So antioxidants are going to kind of neutralize the free radicals, which kind of help to kind of damage our cells and help us fight against that damage. So antioxidants in, fruits and vegetables are key. Lots of colorful nutrients, as much color as you can get on your plate. So this is not the kind of diet where you're doing, steak, potato, brown rice. You want to get color, you want to eat the rainbow, literally. Fiber is super important for two things, for blood sugar balance, because it helps to stabilize our blood sugar, and also estrogen. Our body, we eliminate estrogen out through our feces, actually. So fiber is super important to kind of help prevent buildup of lots of estrogen. And when we're not ovulating, we're going long periods of time with what we call unopposed estrogen levels. So we have high levels of estrogen, or we've got estrogen, we've got no progesterone to balance it out. That can put us at a higher risk of endometrial cancer. So we really want to pay attention to eating enough fiber to help to kind of make sure our body is processing all that estrogen that we're making if we're not ovulating. So that's really, really important when it comes to overall hormone balance for PCOS. And then stress, especially during our luteal phase, so after ovulation, obviously stress control is key throughout the entire month, but we really want to make sure during our luteal phase, so after ovulation to the time our period starts, or the time that we want to take a pregnancy test, we are doing everything we can to focus on stress reduction and self-care, because what happens is our body, when it's stressed out, we start making cortisol instead of progesterone, and you need to have healthy progesterone levels in order to sustain a pregnancy. So that's really important. I do a lot of work around that in my practice to make sure, that I'm supporting my clients through that process. A good supplement prescription. I work in a foods first approach, so I'm always going to recommend a healthy diet, but supplements, can really help us fill in the gaps when we might need that. None of us are perfect eaters 100% of the time, especially me. So it's really important to get in some high quality supplements depending on what you need. But I will say it's also important to not just go and pick, I think that supplement sounds good. I think that supplement, that one works, and create your own supplement prescription, because supplements are strong. Herbs can be really strong for the body. And I think that women kind of underestimate them. They think it's just kind of foo-foo, but it's real. They can be so strong, and taking the wrong ones can not only be a waste of your money, but that can be detrimental. That can actually do a lot more harm than good. I have had clients come to me taking supplements that literally like synthetic progesterone, and that's literally, they come to me and they say, I haven't had a period in 8 months. And I look at their supplement prescription and I say, you need to get off XYZ. Guess what? Their period comes back. So it's really important to work with somebody who understands what these supplements are doing for you and to help you modify your supplement prescription, because supplements can be really helpful, especially with PCOS and fertility. So that's one. And then, other ways, just non-nutrition wise, of course, sleep, making sure you're getting enough sleep. That's so crucial to fertility. Gut health, when it comes to gut health and hormones, the connection is so, so real. I mean, if you think about gut health and digestion, we can be eating all the right foods. We're taking our supplements, we're drinking enough water. But if our guts are completely out of whack and we don't have enough healthy bacteria to help us like digest and absorb the nutrients, you're just peeing out those supplements and you're not really getting any of those nutrients in. So it's really important to make sure that your microbiome is nice and healthy. I run a lot of gut health tests in my practice, even when women don't have, super apparent digestive issues like constipation or diarrhea or something. It's really helpful to take a look at the general health of the gut. And then the movement piece, I see a lot of women who are exercising incorrectly, whether that's over or under or just doing, and that's a whole nother like podcast to just talk about exercise and PCOS. It's one of the most confusing topics, I think, for a lot of women when they come to me. So it's really about, getting into a movement routine that's helpful for you, but also something that's sustainable, because I can give you, this supplement, this exercise routine to follow, but if you don't like it, and you're not going to do it. So it's really about creating something that's doable for women too. So that's something that I integrate into my practice. And I do think that's a really integral piece to the puzzle. So hopefully that's helpful, in kind of where to start. I wish I had more easy answers, like just eat kale, but unfortunately, there's a lot more to that. And it is important to find out, what's driving your specific type of PCOS. If it's insulin resistance, guess what? That blood sugar balance component is going to be so much more important. If your adrenals are contributing, stress is going to be really important. So it's about finding what's, like you mentioned about the root cause, finding the root cause, because there are different things happening within, each case of PCOS, and working with somebody to help you discover that can be super helpful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely figuring out the root cause is like the first step. It's always the first step. I feel like women obviously don't know that that's the first step, but that's the first step before even going to, all right, I'm going to follow the keto diet. I'm just going to go carnivore diet. I'm going to go whatever new diet comes up. It's always getting to that root cause. By following something that does not help and makes matters even worse.
Right. So exactly.
Figuring that step out first. And I like what you said, how, it's important to be supporting the gut to obviously detoxify and remove estrogen and all these other build-up of hormones. And I always like to tell people, like, before you even waste your money on like detox teas and going on juice cleanses and trying to detox that way, it's really important to just support the gut, because when you poop is like the free way of detoxing. It's super free.
I like
you don't
that
have
analogy.
To waste money.
Totally. Yes, I like that analogy. Yes, absolutely. That's such a good statement. Yes, correct. It is. It really is. Yes, and very important to consider. Even if you're not, if you say, oh, my gut's fine, my digestion's fine. It's funny. A lot of clients who we do a gut health test on, I won't say a lot, but some of my worst reports that I've gotten back from these gut health tests, and when I say worst reports, I just mean lots of issues, have been from people that have no symptoms. So, keep that in mind with, whether sometimes we just don't make the connection. Oh, you mean a bowel movement every 3 days isn't the best thing, or you know what I mean? So so that's something to consider.
Definitely, like, you have to be going to the toilet every day, at least once per day.
Yes.
But I think gut health is really important for PCOS, because research does show that we have less of a diverse gut bacteria. And if you've been on the pill, like, the pill's been shown that it disrupts and kills off friendly gut bacteria. So we need to be supporting the gut. So it's definitely important. And touching on the whole supplements, I feel like that's another thing. I feel like people expect taking a supplement, or even a pill, like the Magic Cure. Some of these supplements you might not even need. You might have a poor gut, so that it's not absorbing those nutrients anyway. And like, I think one of the supplements a lot of women are taking when it could be causing even more problems is, I think it's Vitex. That whole
you only want to give Vitex when warranted. You don't want to just take it willy-nilly.
Is like, that's one that it's just a lot of stuff. And I feel like another thing that's important is making sure you're eating enough fat as well. I feel like everyone's got this whole fear of fat. Maybe I feel like it's getting a bit better now. People are more like, yeah, avocados, but I feel like we need to still, push it and get people to eat more fat.
Exactly. Agreed. Oh, totally. Yeah. Fat is crucial for hormone balance. I mean, our sex hormones are built from cholesterol. So we definitely have to eat that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really important
and
too.
Eating a lot of fat is important, and just like a whole balanced diet is just not focusing on one macronutrient, but just, making sure you're eating a well-rounded, balanced diet, nourishing your body. And I feel like people kind of beat themselves up as well when maybe one day they don't have the perfect diet. They might eat something that's quote unquote bad. And I just feel like people need to have that kind of flexibility, that balanced kind of lifestyle where if you do slip up, as they say, or fall off the wagon, that you shouldn't really beat yourself up, and just have that flexibility in your lifestyle, because that's what's going to make it sustainable in the long term. Not saying I'm going to follow a clean diet and never going to indulge in something I crave or enjoy, because that's just not realistic, really.
Exactly.
We've all done that before, and it's never gone so perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. It might give you results for a little bit, and that's fine and dandy. But yes, in the long run, you have to find something that's more balanced, that works for you. Yeah. I mean, I never, some of my clients come to me initially and they say, I want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. That sounds lovely, but in reality, if I do that for you, you're going to go into extreme deprivation, and you're going to feel restrictive, and you might lose some weight, and then it's going to come back once you decide that this is no longer sustainable. So yes, balance is key, and it's key to a happy life. We don't want to spend our lives obsessing over, oh my gosh, I ate a cupcake. It's really about balance, and eating how you want to be eating ideally for your PCOS the majority of the time, right? Not all the time. That's impossible. I'm a dietitian, and I physically cannot do that. So I don't expect my clients to, and I don't think that anybody else should feel they need to either.
Definitely. So I put like a Q&A up on my Instagram page, just to see if I had any questions about PCOS and fertility. So I had this one question. Someone was, she's a vegetarian.
Yes.
And her nutritionist or someone told her that you won't be able to help your PCOS, like balance your hormones and all this kind of stuff, without eating some fish or some kind of meat. As a registered dietitian, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I won't say it's impossible. It definitely, I've seen lots of improvements in clients who eat, pretty strict vegetarian diets. It is more difficult. And the reason is because when we eliminate things like meat and seafood and eggs, we automatically end up eating more carbohydrates, because things like beans and lentils and quinoa and some of these plant-based sources of protein, air quotes, protein, they do contain a hefty amount of carbs versus something like a shrimp. So it's difficult. It can be difficult. I won't say it's impossible, but we've definitely had to get very creative. And what happens too is a lot of times there's less variety, because we're really trying to hit specific macro goals, and it's difficult to do that when we're taking so many foods off of the table. But there have been clients that I've helped, and we've made great headway, but I will say it does usually take longer, and it's just harder. So something to consider, if you're eating vegetarian for religious reasons or ethical reasons, obviously you do you. But if you're eating vegetarian because you think it's the best diet for PCOS, I would say my opinion as a professional, it is not. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Another one is this. I got quite a few on this actually, that people keep getting spotting during their cycles.
Yes.
And so like part A of this is, why does this happen? And part B of this is, can you still try and get pregnant during when you're spotting, basically?
Okay, so typically with spotting, and there's different reasons for spotting. That's what makes it tricky. If you're experiencing consistent spotting, like throughout the month, like you're spotting for 10 days. Sometimes we see spotting for just a little bit right around ovulation, and sometimes we see spotting leading up to a period after you've ovulated because your progesterone is on the lower side. So those two reasons are not going to affect your fertility. So that's why, again, it's important to track your cycle and determine and be able to confirm that ovulation happened. If you can't do that or you don't know that, and if we take those two reasons off the table, you're likely spotting because you're not ovulating. And when there's all kinds of reasons why our uterine lining just decides to show up and say, hey, I want to party for a few days. Who knows? But you're likely spotting because you're not ovulating. And so you've got to get ovulation back on track in order to conceive. So if you've ruled out if you're spotting and you've ruled out that you haven't yet ovulated, you're not ovulating right then I would probably say, you do have some kind of anovulatory issue happening or irregular ovulation, and you really need to get that back on track. And then you won't see the spotting. Does that help? It's tricky, but.
No, yeah. I'm
okay.
Thanks for sharing that. And
yes.
To wrap up, do you have a last piece of advice or a tip just to kind of wrap up for our listeners, and then how they can connect with you as well?
Yeah. So a tip. I would say, without getting too long-winded, when you first get a PCOS diagnosis, it's scary. It's really scary. I've been there, and it's confusing, and it's difficult to digest, especially when you don't know much about it. And it sounds so scary, and it can feel so scary. But, the sooner you can get to the place of acceptance with PCOS, the better your outcome is going to be, whatever it is, whether it's hormone balance, whether it's, reducing spotting, whether it's trying to get pregnant. It took me a long time to accept my diagnosis, and really I was ashamed. I was ashamed to talk about it on my social media. I just kind of started my practice. And then once I got comfortable and I said, yeah, hey sister, I'm a sister too. You meet all these other women, great, wonderful women in this community who are helpful. And it frees you from that shame and that guilt and that what's going on, what's wrong with my body. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm gonna cry. PCOS is, it's something that you carry for life, but there are pros to that. And one of the biggest pros is you become an advocate for your own health. You speak up for yourself and you say, I don't want that birth control to fix my problems. I'm going to do it myself. And you're able to, learn more, and you're seeking out information. You're bettering your health. So that is such a gift. And I want everyone with PCOS to think about it that way and accept that this is their diagnosis, but it doesn't define them. I'm going to cry. So that's my tip, my emotional tip. And I guess, so, and then just your second question, where you can find me. My website is www.thewomensdietitian.com. And my Instagram is The Women's Dietitian. So you can find me there. I post a lot about PCOS. I work with women that have separate issues from PCOS, but I would say a lot of my clients are PCOS clients. So I definitely, I am taking new clients now. So you can find me there, and I hope that we're able to connect and say hi on my Instagram page.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'll have everything linked in the show notes. Highly recommend that you go follow. Tons of great information, very empowering. Thank you so much. I won't take any more of your time, but thank you so much for taking the time out today to come on.
I've got a full Friday for some reason, but thank you so much for having me. It was great to see you and meet you. And I hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you again. Take care.